welcome to Forbidden Planet TV, and on today's extra special Halloween episode, we are in Liverpool to chat to Ramsey Campbell. Hi Ramsey, how's it going?
How are you doing? Okay.
Very well, very well. I made it up here in one piece, yes. We are well, we are well.
You survived crew.
Yes, survived crew. It was quite the experience. It hasn't changed much in the 20 years since I was at university.
No, the same passengers are still waiting on the platform.
Yes, I love when I was there was a train leaving to go to Glasgow and then it just stopped.
Yes.
And it just stopped there for like 20 minutes.
Yes, they'll do that.
Just waving at people, but they'll never leave. So yes, we are here to kind of talk about 60 years in horror, which is crazy and amazing.
Crazy is right. Yeah.
Did you imagine, like when you were writing your first books, did you imagine you'd still be writing 60 years later?
I didn't even imagine I was going to be published when I wrote the first book, to be honest. No, hell's teeth. Because I mean, 14 years old, I mean, it's difficult for anybody listening, I know, to believe this now, but there had never been a single Lovecraft paperback published in Britain. The very first one done by, I think it was World Distributors.
Okay.
Cry Horror with a great Richard Powers cover. And I saw it in a shop window, 14 years old, and I scraped in my pocket because I wasn't sure I had half a crown to buy half a crown's worth of farthings. And I did, just, so I got home, read it, was imbued with it, I thought it was the greatest thing I'd ever read. And although I've been already, doing the odd attempt at supernatural horror, because that's what I always loved, this was the first time that I really focused on, emulating a favourite writer.
Yes.
And I was then a member of the British Science Fiction Association. And one of my correspondents, Pat Kearney, another fan of weird tales and the like, who later became a historian of Olympia Press and erotica generally. He suggested I should send the stories to August Derleth at Arkham House, guys, which was then the world's leading publisher of the fantastic. It was, of course, specifically Lovecraft's publisher. They published all his first works in hardcover. So I wrote, dear Mr. Derleth, I've written some Lovecraftian stories, and you were clearly the world's foremost authority. Could you tell me, are they any good? And that's all I wanted. That was all that Pat had suggested. Now I got a letter back from Derleth. I mean, this is controversial, but he said, "Well, look, we own the copyrights on Lovecraft's ideas, so you must not publish these until we've." We've okayed them, so I duly typed them up at his behest, sent them over. After several weeks, I got this letter back saying, these stories did a lot of work. Well, by gum, did they ever? Not least because I'd set them all in Massachusetts and never been further than Yorkshire, and it showed, believe me. But he said, if you're prepared to do this work, and you need to, there's various other suggestions he made, flesh the stories out and show, don't tell, that great bit of advice. And if you have more stories of the same kind in you, we do think you have a potential Arkham House book here. Wow. For 14 years old, that's pretty fighting talk, So I mean, having cursed and muttered for half an hour over the editorial suggestions, I'm not going to see whether he's probably right. And anyway, he's saying he's going to publish these stories. So I duly did rewrite them along his lines. He published the first story when I was 16, alongside people like Robert Bloch, for heaven's sake, H. Russell Wakefield, John Metcalf, in an anthology. Basically as a sort of trailer for the book that he aimed to publish. And then when I was 18, he did indeed publish that first book, and here we are talking about it now.
It's incredible. We were saying before, obviously off camera, how Flamesby Press are starting to bring back, some of the older titles. So you have your new titles and your older titles available.
Yes.
What are the other plans do you have, for older titles, and kind of what are you working on?
Oh, I think older titles, we still got one in the pipeline, which is Incarnate.
Yes.
Having said that, I've already delivered next year's new novel, so I think that will probably take over next year at least, But I imagine that, after that, more will be reappearing from its grave. But I've already written and completely rewritten, because the great fun thing I enjoy most probably about writing in some ways is getting ruthless with the first draft and chucking out everything I possibly can and improving everything I possibly can. So that's an echo of Children. So that's for next year. And I'm presently the first draft of yet another novel. So it never ends, basically. It's a compulsion.
I love really prolific authors. I love the authors that just bring me something at least once a year.
Yeah. That's all I'm going to do. Once a year.
This is great. Because, this is a very geeky book buyer thing, but certain authors, because they're so prolific, will have spreadsheets, and I colour code those authors, and I know that they'll be they're in my favourite colours, because they're just they're delivering books every year.
Right.
We've got great things we can do in signings and events and all kinds of things. And then there's obviously certain authors that are just is it due anytime?
Yes.
So please carry on.
I'll do my best. I can't stop. I shall still be, as they nail the lid down, I'll be saying, hang on, just give me a light here, I need to finish this chapter.
So, what would you say has been your highlight of your career?
Oh gosh, well it depends on what we mean really. I mean, if it were, what people have done for me, then all the amazing awards and lifetime achievement awards. I mean, just this, very recently at FantasyCon, they gave me the Carl Edward Wagner Award for lifetime stuff. Basically, I mean, it's doubly meaningful because he was an old friend. Carl, died far too soon and wrote far too little, basically. Yes. So that's got to be one of them. I mean, in terms of writing, I'm fond of the trilogy actually. I do rather feel that it's the only trilogy I've ever written, the only one I shall ever write. I'm quite certain, because but that one, because for a long time, you see, my friend, great old friend Pete Crowther at PS Publishing was the guy who originally, gave me the seed of it. Yeah. And he said, nobody's written a horror trilogy. It's not strictly true. There was the Ghost House trilogy by McNally back in the 70s or 80s, I think. And of course Jeff Vandermeer, did the Southern Reach. So he actually picked me at the pub, there's room for more than one then. Read both, folks, by all means. But the thing was, as far as I said, there's no point in writing a trilogy unless there is a reason to write a trilogy. Yes. It can't just be a long novel you've chopped into 3 volumes. There's got to be a reason to 3 volumes. And eventually I thought, well, maybe follow the characters across virtually their entire lives. And, started when they're early teens, and then mid 30s, mid 40s rather, and then go on to the grey years that you're seeing sitting on me now, basically. And I like that. I like the fact that the antagonists go through a similar process, and there are more of them. Their family grows as by each volume, and I mean, I like writing novels because they do gather their own impetus. So a trilogy even more so, and I did like this whole thing back, coming back to the characters and for another year basically, which I generally speaking I don't do. Although I do build in the odd reference back in recent novels to particularly to occultists and the like who've popped up in early books. They make some kind of a reappearance, or at least they're written, their journals do. So I kind of enjoy that. But what I try to do, I think, is try to come up with something new. Basically, if I'm going to deal with something like astral projection, let's say, for the sake of argument, which is in the second volume of the trilogy, I think there's got to be a bit more point to it. So what about the notion that you can travel across space as well? Well, I mean, that's not strictly do with Hope Hodgson with the House on the Borderland, but I hope I give it a bit of a new twist. Or the idea, let me see which novel am I thinking of? Oh, it's the Wise Friend, isn't it? That if somebody who's practiced black magic or the like has been buried, that they kind of imbue the landscape. So if you take away a sample of the soil, you've got a bit of them that you can do things with. Which I suppose is a sort of variation on Charles Dexter Ward, really, but I'm doing my best to come up with the odd new idea. So that's a long answer to a very short question, but this is what you're getting. You can see that now.
And it's funny you mentioned Jeff Vandermeer because we got him on next month. He's over, and he's written the fourth book in the trilogy.
I believe so, yes.
Expected.
No, a quartet. You can't call it a trilogy now. It's a quartet. So I did do a trilogy.
Yes,
he's done a quartet.
See, so
there you are.
You were first.
Yes. No, I wasn't first, actually.
Well,
but anyway, what the hell.
Top three.
Well, yeah. Okay.
So, your kind of greatest inspiration, so any kind of particular films, books, anything that really has inspired you to write and continue?
Well, Lovecraft for a start.
Yes.
I mean, the sense of structure, the modulation of language, which, there's far more of that than is commonly acknowledged. I mean, Baz as well as detractors, really, that he really is very careful with language in many ways. It's very gradually accrued and built on. It's not all purple prose, to put it mildly. M.R. James was a great master of basically, the sentence or even the phrase that is, kind of distills more dread than most of us could do in a paragraph. That extraordinary sort of conciseness of his that is inimitable, but he's sort of the best of anybody at it. But then equally, I discovered Nabokov when I was just turning 17, and that was a huge influence, a sort of liberation, really, in terms of what you could do with language and narrative and structure and tone, so forth. And Graham Greene I've always loved as well. So, I mean, those folks certainly, I wouldn't say they have to take the blame, it's all my responsibility, but they are there, and I hope I've subsumed them all by now, basically, but they were certainly there and still are. Films, not a whole lot, but I mean, the two actually that I suppose I would cite, I mean, again, early experiences. One was Buñuel's Los Olvidados, which is Buñuel theoretically being a social realist rather than a surrealist, but I mean, it's pushed so far the realism that it always sort of tips over into surrealism. And there's a dream at the middle of the film which is just utterly naturalistic. And one of the very few things that ever gave me nightmares, actually. So, I mean, I remember it was the very first subtitled film I ever saw, actually, when we had the Soldo cinemas. And it was the bottom half of the double bill with Bert Igor's The Cyclops, which is one of the sort of atomic radiation makes people grow giant for no very clear reason. And the chap's scalp falls over one eye, so he's the Cyclops, basically. He pops up from behind the mountain. It's pretty impressive. Certainly to a 14-year-old, because by then I could, bluff my way past the X certificate and get in. But then on came this other film. I thought, well, what the hell? What's this writing at the bottom of the screen? What am I supposed to do? Do I look at the film? Do I read the bottom? But I got into it pretty quickly. And then after about 10 minutes, I genuinely was thinking, I don't believe I'm seeing this on a cinema screen. How could they show these things on cinema? In terms of just, utter sort of ruthless realism. Of the sort of back streets of Mexico City. So I mean that was, and that I think the whole thing of dream come realism. I think that influenced me in terms of what you can do with conflating or merging or balancing the two. And the other one was last year in Marienbad, which again I've always loved. So I think 17 or so, and just the play with narrative and the sense of absolute temporal dislocation. The next shot you may be a year earlier or a year later, or you may be a year that never happened, and you figure it out because the director says it's going to throw you a lifeline. And I mean, I've always thought really that enigmas are more, or can be more satisfying than explanations, and that's certainly a case of it. And again, I think that sort of influenced me in some ways too.
Definitely, and I was going to say, obviously we'll be coming on to your new book very soon, but that's a definite theme in the innovations, which I don't, but we'll be coming up to.
Thank you.
So the kind of looking at the horror boom of the 70s and 80s, and obviously publishers kind of, things like Rosemary's Baby and stuff, for example, like suddenly everyone's like, oh, I'm after horror.
Let's not forget Carrie and Son's Love.
Of course, but how could we forget the Art of Damascus? But I suppose, I know other authors like Grady Hendrix and stuff have spoken about this before, how suddenly there were hundreds and hundreds.
Oh gosh, every publisher wanted their horror line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did you find that kind of hurt horror, that there was a period where it just kind of disappeared. And
there was eventually a time in which it disappeared in the mid-90s. Yes, by gum, yes. But when I got called, well, basically a call from my agent and said, well, I don't think I can sell your sort of stuff anymore. You're going to have to, what he actually said was, you write something more like Thomas Harris. Well, I mean, okay, I like Thomas Harris, obviously, but I can't write like Thomas Harris, I can only write like Ramsey Campbell, and unfortunately, it doesn't engage my imagination. I can't do it. But I did do a couple of non-supernatural crime horror adjacent novels, if you like. And the thing was, I had already written several. The Face of the Sky was actually my second completed novel. And that's completely gone to it's suddenly of somebody losing their mind in an overspill town outside Liverpool, basically. So it wasn't that I couldn't write these things, or nor that they didn't engage me, but I didn't want to be required to do them. I'd much rather they became, they were part of the natural process. And I mean, I do remember, lying awake. Well, poor Jenny, I think I was probably asleep. I hope so, anyway. But I was genuinely lying awake at 4 o'clock in the morning, trying to work out a plot, to do one of these novels. I ultimately did a book called The Last Voice They Hear, which has been out of print for a while, so that might be one for Flame Tree to have a look at sometime. I wrote the first couple of chapters, and it was pretty damn mechanical. And then the imagination did kick in. I did begin to take hold. It began to take hold of it, and I began to see possibilities of writing the sort of things I wanted to write. And I duly did with that. And there was a book called Silent Children, the one after it.
Okay.
And then the Pact of the Fathers, which wasn't very good, which was pretty well known supernatural. But then I remember saying I remember it was at I think it was World Fantasy in Niagara Falls, actually, and I was being interviewed by Caitlin Kinn, it was, and my editor at Torn, Melissa Singer, was in the audience. I said, look, was this I'm thinking of a supernatural novel. Can I do one? I said, oh, go on then. You heard it here first. So that, off I went and did The Darkest Part of the Woods and came right back into what I really wanted to do. But I have done crime novels since then. But as I say, for me, they need to be part of just the natural process. They need in some way to suggest themselves next.
Yes.
I don't really want to be required to do it.
Yes.
But they are. But still, I'm not ashamed of those. those 90s books. Sure.
I suppose it's just like if obviously the supernatural element is such a part of your works that you can't.
I prefer not to. I said, I like writing the uncanny in that way.
Yes. And in regards to, I suppose, the almost like renaissance that horror is having now, that there's lots of remakes, that there are beautiful anniversary editions they've done of like Carrie, for example, recently. Like, I bet it's exciting to be part of this kind of,
Very much so, yes. And I mean, I genuinely think we're in a new golden age of horror, actually, in terms of cinema, and particularly, I think, in terms of prose fiction. And quite a lot from the independent presses, like Flame Tree, like Titan, of course, as well. But also, some of the biggies seem to be, moving that way again. But this is why the one question I really don't like being asked is, who are you reading now? Who do you recommend? Because for me, there's so much of it, and also I'm so aware that there's so much more I haven't read that I feel I'm going to leave out some of the best. And even in terms of the ones I've read, when the interviews are, I think, oh God, no, I forgot them. So I prefer to say, no, I'd rather not. I mean, I will, very, because you've not asked me this, but I'll do one of each, so so people can't feel left out exactly. So, I mean, the film that I recommend, well, we were talking about this off camera earlier, actually, is the original version of Speak No Evil, the Danish film, which Jenny and I watched on the Shudder channel, where I think it still is, and at the end we just were silent for some time, really. Now there is a remake with James McAvoy, which is pretty good, but it takes a completely different turn about half an hour from the end. The original is much more devastating, I'll say no more than that. If I could slip one more, and it's Beau is Afraid, the Ari Aster movie, which is not strictly a well, it's not really a horror film, it's more a comedy of paranoia. Or nightmare comedy, as he calls it, which I think, well, appeals to me a lot, you know, and I've written a lot of it myself, basically, you know. And I mean, Joaquin Phoenix is astounding, you know, well, he often is astounding, but even more astounding. I gather he passed out at the end of one take, according to an interview with Ari Aster. And the book, I'll just do one book, because people won't have heard of this guy yet, but you will, I hope, and you should. There's a guy called Gareth Wood, and his novel, At Night, White Bracken, I did a quote for, because you know, I like helping new guys or other people, you know, when I can, so I've done quite a lot along the way. I'm always quite sort of proud of that I did a book, an anthology back in the 80s called New Terrors. I think there were half a dozen first publications in that. You know, some of them have gone on to, you know, much greater things, like Steve Resnais 10 and so forth, you know. For the Mark Laidlaw, they were first in there. So, yeah, I like doing that. But yes, again, just to come back to the original question, yeah, I think we're in a golden age.
Yes, yeah, it is fantastic to see, and even, I suppose, the more traditional booksellers out there are actually starting to put horror sections back in.
I think so, yeah.
So, hey, let's have some healthy
Yes,
competition.
well, if I can slip in one plug, is this is possible?
Yes, certainly, yes.
To another, for somebody else,
Yes,
or for
yes.
another, you know, another chain. But now I'm going to be launching the incubations in Waterstones and Liverpool 1 on the 14th of November. So, folks, if you hear this and want to come along,
come along. So let's talk about the incubations. Nice little segue there. This is something you've obviously done in other books, but that very quiet, very kind of mundane, almost day-to-day kind of opening where there's a driving lesson.
That's right.
And
that goes horribly wrong.
That goes horribly wrong. And you're very much lulled into this kind of false sense of.
Well, not the book about you, like, you know worse is coming.
You know, yeah. But how, like, I can just imagine you kind of excitingly, like, waiting for the shoe to drop, like waiting for that moment.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, how do you manage to balance that kind of that normal everyday with the other stuff?
Well, you see, here I get to give you the useless answers, because basically it's instinctive. You know, I don't have a method per se that I'm conscious of. I'd rather not be conscious of it, in case, you know, I begin to replicate myself consciously. It's the last thing I'd want to do if I could possibly avoid it. So I actually think that, you know, every new novel, every new story, for me, you know, should be a new set of problems, basically, you know, to be solved in maybe a new way. It's as if almost as if I'm writing a novel for the first time. Although, you know, obviously I've learned skills over the, Lord knows, 6 decades. But still, you know, I can bring those to bear. You know, I don't want to use them too mechanically. That's what I'm really saying.
Yes.
So the honest answer is I don't know.
Maybe if you think about it too much, like you're almost kind of scared that you can kind of overthink it. Maybe.
Exactly, I think that's it.
Just let it be what it is.
Yes. Because I remember, I mean, this is off the point. Well, it's on the point in a way. I remember, back in the 80s, I think it was Kathy Kramer, who was then Dave Hartwell's wife. You know, she was doing an anthology called The Architecture of Fear, in which basically she wanted the setting, you know, the architectural setting, to be somehow, you know, not the characters, certainly, you know, the absolutely central to the supernatural element, not just be a haunted house, but it has to be something more than that. So she asked me to do a story, which at a convention, you know, I said, yeah, I'll do one. And then she sent around a letter to all the contributors, potential contributors, saying, so, you know, she described the sort of thing she wanted. And she said, the sort of thing Ramsey Campbell does in Incarnate in the Facebook site. And I thought, oh my God, she's asking me to imitate myself. You know, what do I do now? So the only thing I could do was forget what she'd said. And, you know, and luckily, I got a good idea and I did it. But that was disconcerting, certainly.
Yeah, I was going to say, that is quite frightening to be like, oh, okay, so I just do me.
Just do me. Right. Yeah, give us more of that Ramsey Campbell stuff.
Okay.
More of that Barton Fink stuff. That's right.
So the characters, I'm just thinking of some of the scenes, especially with the mother and father, which remind me so much of like conversations I've had with my mum.
Oh dear.
Like when I'm reading them, I'm just like, you know, when you're just, if you've got some tribulation in your life and you're just like, well, everything's fine now.
Oh,
Let's
yes.
have a
Oh,
cup
yes.
of tea, kind of.
Oh gosh,
kind
yes.
of
Oh, cup of tea,
element.
yes, that's
Yes. Where do these kind of these characters for you, are they based on people you know? Are they based on kind of like
Only in terms of general observation, usually speaking, they won't be taken from the life, no.
Yes.
I mean, I may take little bits from various people and stick them together, but no, it's very unusual to be specific in that way.
Yeah, I suppose you'd be worried in case someone's just like, is that based?
No, well, I've had that happen a couple of times, and usually it wasn't. I remember, oh good Lord, the Count of 11 from decades back now, in the late 80s it would have been, I think, yeah. And two of our friends actually said, is that me? Well, it wasn't either, really. I suppose there were bits of each of them in poor old Jack Orchard, the protagonist. Yes. But it wasn't meant to be either of them. But there you are. My instincts sometimes put me in peril. So that's the truth of it.
Yes, I know we had, I interviewed Rachel Harrison earlier this year, and in a few of her books she kind of has a, like a motherly figure.
Yes.
And she's just like, just so everyone out there knows, I love my mom. Kind of thing. I'm just like, oh, absolutely.
Yes.
It's not based on
No.
So the now this was an interesting one because I've recently read House of Last Resort, and the whole idea of the language barrier.
This is Chris Golden, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So kind of looking at the idea. So again, I'm trying not to spoil the incubation. No. I want people to run out and grab a copy. That you have the language barrier, that you're trying to kind of perceive what is meant, so the kind of the German pen friend that the main character
I mean,
has.
the language is very precise, but it's slightly off, very slightly off.
Yes, yeah. Was that an interesting kind of idea for you to
Oh, very much so, yeah, but I mean, this is often true, that the conversations of my novels, they tend to go at cross purposes in some ways, even whether it's not, different nationalities conversing. I mean, the same happens in 13 Days by Sunset Beach, actually, because that's certainly a Greek island. And I in that actually, I felt a bit, well, have I exaggerated a little bit? But in fact, we always go to Greece for a holiday every year. And so, before I delivered it, I think probably, because I was still reading the printout to do final sort of revision. And I thought, oh, actually, no, people are talking like this, so no, I haven't made it up. So, I feel vindicated, basically. But no, as I say, I mean, my characters frequently, are not quite sure what each is saying to the other. And I mean, that is autobiographical to an extent. I mean, particularly when I was young, I'm not really now, but certainly in my teens and earlier. I was in many ways a horribly introverted kid, and I was very afraid of, particularly if somebody said something I didn't quite hear it. I was afraid to say, sorry, what was that again? I wouldn't know, obviously, But I mean, for instance, when I started at a grammar school when I was 11, and one of the houses of the school I thought was called Running Me. Now, in fact, it's Running Mead, obviously.
Yes.
But I thought, well, Running Mead, it's got something to do with racing. I don't understand it. And I don't know how long I went on thinking, what the hell is it called that? Oh, as a good Catholic, I said, what the hell? What the Dickens? I've no idea. But yeah, that's about me. I think, drawing upon my early awkwardnesses, many of which there were. So it's a fruitful area, basically.
Yes, and I suppose it just adds an extra kind of element, because not kind of necessarily understanding the language of the person you're talking to. Yeah. So if they're trying to kind of warn you or trying to tell you about something, you're just somewhat oblivious.
Yes. That's right.
So the next point I have is bugs.
Oh yes.
So if anyone squeamish out there is some light bug horror.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me do a limerick to lighten the mood. Here we are. One of mine. You understand this, don't you? I'm sure. Though you have no aversion to bugs, you may well draw the line at giant slugs. Should your lettuce at lunch seem too lacking in crunch, the cause may crawl forth from your lugs. There you are. Sean, that's for you. Sean Hudson, there you go, Sean.
Oh my god. So I suppose what the bug symbolises in here was, and I know there is a note in the proof, I presume it's going to be in the finished copy as well, about how a moth flew in when you were
Yes, that will be in, yes.
Yes. So
right.
was that idea already forming?
Oh, very much so. Oh gosh, yes. Oh no, that was when I think I was probably even on the rewrite actually.
Right, okay.
So no, the book was fully formed by then. It was just these well, apparently quite innocuous. Of course, there's also a cat, isn't there, at one point, and a dog. So it can take any form basically, which is one of the strange things about this legend. And one of the things about that was, let's not say too much about it, but the fact was, I didn't know about this. Once I developed this whole idea of the twin town, going to visit this place in Bavaria. I want to say, well, is there some sort of alpine legend that I could draw upon or refer to as being possibly the basis of what is going to happen to this unlucky protagonist of mine? And then I looked it up and I thought, good Lord, I never knew that meant that. And well, the rest you know, or not the people who haven't read it don't know it yet, but they'll find out.
Because there was a very good horror film recently, Infested, which was
yes.
very, very good, and it was. I hate spiders, but there was something weirdly kind of captivating about either reading or watching something that you're terrified of.
Yeah. Yes.
Is there anything that particularly scares you? Like, do you have any kind of phobias? And do you ever kind of incorporate that into a book to say, right, I'm going to deal with it?
I don't think I have any phobias per se. I mean, spiders, I don't mind spiders actually. So there's one I just put it out. The killer, I want to kill it because eating all the flies basically.
Yes.
Things that move, insects that move at a great speed. A cave where it's going to go up your trouser leg or something like that. But spiders, I think, tend to be the opposite. They tend to be as frightened of us as we are of them. So it's much more things like sort of the vulnerability of children and human gullibility and the sort of rush to irrationality and what seems to be increasingly happening, people espousing sort of belief systems, no matter how irrational, and often belief systems that will kind of answer all your questions so long as you go up the right to ask them. All this stuff. That pretty damn well frightens me. And actually, I suppose this is it. People, when the question sometimes comes up, why do you write horror? These days, I tend to say, well, look around you. Why wouldn't you write horror? Basically.
Yes. Yeah. No. Definitely. And that kind of, I suppose, that touches on. We see the main character Leo. Some things that happen in his childhood, as well as kind of modern day, and that definitely touches on that idea of the childhood protection, not being able to kind of fully look after their best interests. So the other very interesting thing in here is the kind of the occultism and the kind of, I suppose, looking at that Nazi obsession around occultism.
Yes.
Where did the kind of research and stuff for that start?
Well, you see, I have to go all the way back because the initial idea for the book, I've got an archive here in the Liverpool University, the science fiction hub actually, with a lot of my early manuscripts, and some of the actually up to about the late 80s, I think, by now. I was doing. We were reissuing Midnight Sun, because that's PS obviously did that. So I wanted to have another look at the notes I'd made, which I would write in afterward, and all the notes are there as well as the manuscript. And I suddenly realised, well, at the other end of the notebook, or one of the notebooks, I'd actually started to work on a different novel back in 88 or so. And I'd completely forgotten about it. There was just this idea of twin towns. And at that stage, I'd had the idea of maybe the other town is a town of magicians or something like that, a bit like Alton and Blackwood, ancient sorceries.
Yes.
And I couldn't really make that work, so I abandoned it. But I thought, coming back to it, I thought, well, actually, this twin town idea, there might be something in that. And so it occurred to me just to think, first of all, well, why were the twin towns at all? Which was, of course, it was to re-establish international relations after the Second World War. And so I thought, well, okay, one in Germany. And then we got onto the whole business about, Alpine legends. And that's where it came from. But also, certainly, underlying it, is this notion of recrudescence of Nazism and the like. And I suppose it's, even more apposite now than, when I finished writing the first draft of the book. But again, I'd actually tried way back in the late 70s, a novel called The Parasite, which is not very good. Some people like, some people like it. I'm not going to dismiss, but I found it very, pretty clumsy and lumpy. And it tried to stuff in too much, I think. But that was the first one where I tried to deal with the notion of the Nazi preoccupation with the occult. But of course, it's hard. It's not a new theme, obviously. It's new to me. I was just thinking just today. The first one I encountered was a book by Evelyn Berkman, who was an American composer and Gothic novelist, modern Gothic, and one called The Evil of Time, where someone who is tracking down art stolen by the Nazis after the war, she's tracking down, and finds this evil grave, which, you may be able to guess whose grave it is, but it's quite a striking novel. That's been, I think, out of print for a long time. And of course, we had Dennis Wheatley doing it. They used dark forces. We have They Saved Hitler's Brain. We have The Frozen Dead with poor old Dana Andrews. At the butt end of his career, put it politely, where he's a scientist reviving Nazi soldiers, and he has a wall with animated arms sticking out of it, one of which actually sees him off at the end of the film, which might be more alarming to watch if the camera angle didn't let us see the chap who's stuck his arm through the wall to do it. But we're off the point here.
I did make a note on my notes about there was a horror comedy a few years ago called Dead Snow.
Oh, Dead Snow, yes, that's right.
And I think there was also maybe a sequel that I haven't watched.
There was, I believe there was, Dead Snow 2,
yes.
The Blizzard.
The Blizzard. Electric Boogaloo. But weirdly compelling viewing.
Oh yes.
So coming towards the end of the interview today, so a couple more questions for you. So looking at the idea of labyrinths again, as there's some really fascinating scenes in here where you just feel like you can feel almost the claustrophobic nature, like you're running and you cannot figure out where you are.
Well, it's a duty-free shop in the airport, Well, that's what it feels like to me, basically.
That was like,
how do we get out of this?
It was trying to get around Euston Station. We mentioned that as well. It's just like, oh god. Is this kind of how important was that as like a motif, and is this something you'd kind of played with before, like the idea of labyrinths? And
well, I suppose incarnated in a way, it's not quite a labyrinth, is it? But it's the infinite house, basically, which is in some ways similar. But no, I'm not really. There is I think I did a maze story. Yes, I've done a couple of mirror maze stories. And in fact, there's a mirror maze in next year's novel, in a fairground. So now you've touched on something that I didn't even realise myself. And which is not strictly irrelevant, I suppose. I do love Escher, MC Escher.
Yes.
And you can't get any more labyrinth, well, along with Paradisos, but you can't get much more labyrinth than those guys. So it's probably all locked in my head. But equally, no, really, it's about me in a duty-free shop in the airport, basically.
Yes, I do hate that duty-free, especially recently. I was coming back from holiday and kind of, you're just like, I just want to get on my flight.
Yes, that's right.
I've had enough. Just get on the flight. And so to finish the interview, we're going to talk about Liverpool and I suppose Liverpool is obviously very important to you, and it's kind of become its own character in a lot of your books. Like it feels kind of like so vibrant and alive in its own way. How important is that to you?
Oh, hugely. I suppose I'd probably say Merseyside as well as Liverpool itself.
Yes.
So quite a few places around, because we live just over the road there on the Wirral Peninsula, but I've used various bits of that in my various stories. But actually, I mean, I think this is really the truth of it, that the very first story I would sort of feel is my own more than the influences, if you like, that went into it. Was I wrote when I was, let me see, it was 19, called The Cellars, and that was not mainly based on, but it was inspired by a real setting in downtown Liverpool. It was a series of sub-cellars that were open. You know, anybody wanted to wander in, you've got a flashlight, you could go through them. You know, there seemed to be miles of them, and levels of them. And you know, a friend who worked in owned a bookshop just round the corner, he introduced me to the site. There's got to be a story here, and I wrote it. And so a lot of it is simply an almost literal account of, you know, description of those cellars. And well, from there I sort of moved on. I mean, a lot of the early novels actually, well, several of the early novels, with The Dog Ate His Mother. Again, you know. Some of the descriptions of sort of derelict streets in that, and In the Face That Must Die. That was what they were like. You know, it's after the Blitz, and they'd still not been rebuilt. So you just wanted to, you know, acres, miles of you know, houses with no roof and houses with just maybe the facade, and not a soul inside. So these do keep recurring in my story. But Liverpool, Liverpool is. You know, my soul is part of the dark part of my soul, my creative, whatever it is, my creative self, whatever that is, that little creature that comes to see me when I'm at my desk.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you gave me an excuse to come back to Liverpool.
Well,
because,
me too.
Yes, it's a lovely city, and Thank you for writing such amazing books, and here's to another 60 years.
Well, all right, thank you for having me.
And for anyone at home, we will have signed copies going out to all of our stores, and we'll have a lovely display in Liverpool, of course. So if you're in the area, do pop by, and we will see you for the next interview. Happy Halloween! Bye.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.